Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe. Here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And today we are finally getting started on our Conan the Barbarian book club. Honestly, I've been waiting a while for this. I really like these short stories. I really do like Conan. I've only just gotten started on the Conan universe like you, but I really love what I've read so far. I feel that there's no better place than to start with the Nemedian Chronicles section of this chapter where it says, "Know, O Prince, that between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the gleaming cities, and the years of the rise of the sons of Arius, there was an age undreamed of, when shining kingdoms lay spread across the world, like blue mantles beneath the stars. Nemedia, Ophir, Brithunia, Hyperborea, Zamora, with its dark-haired women and towers of spider-haunted mystery. Zingara, with its chivalry. Koth, that bordered on the pastoral lands of Shem. Stygia, with its shadow-guarded tombs. Hyrcania, whose riders wore steel and silk and gold. But the proudest kingdom of the world was Aquilonia, reigning supreme in the dreaming west. Hither came Conan, the Cimmerian, black-haired, sullen-eyed, sword in hand. A thief, a reaver, a slayer, with gigantic melancholies and gigantic mirth, to tread the jeweled thrones of the earth under his sandaled feet." I love that part. And it's gone down in legend amongst Conan fans.
I can see why.
I love it. You know who read a portion of it for the Conan the Barbarian movie? Mako. You know how he says that between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis. That part is part of the narration in the movie, which I really like that the director took that part. That's actually one of the more iconic parts, although I wish he kept other things. And I kind of wonder, who are the sons of Arius? I'm gonna have to look that up later. Let's get on with the lore analysis. There's an interesting part on page 23 of the edition I have, which is the black book edition, I think I'll call it. It's the complete chronicles of Conan. There's something about ghosts of murdered men, which kind of reminds me of the Shadow Kingdom of Kull. Remember we read that one? And yeah, the ghosts of all the murdered kings who were murdered at the hands of the Snake Men.
I haven't thought of that.
These two parts are kind of in dialogue with each other. Except in this case, the Shadow Kingdom is not one of snake men, but men who act like snakes, in contrast to the actual snake men who act like snakes. I think we're supposed to look at Ascalante, Fa-Faman, as being like those snake men.
Yeah, I got that impression when it described the evil eyes.
Okay, so that's what eventually gave it away to you. Because Howard is noted for butchering some of his stories into later ones. You got entire chunks of short stories that are kind of cobbled together to make the Hour of the Dragon. And here, I think there's an element of the Shadow Empire and the one where Kull, it says, "By this axe I rule, this is my scepter." The one where he destroys the stone tablets. These short stories were cobbled together into this Conan story. Most of this chapter is dialogue. It's really interesting that we got the characters naming all the conspirators. We have Volmana, Count of Caraban, Grommel, commander of the Black Legion, Dion, the Baron of Attalus, and we have Ronaldo the Minstrel. Volmana is to help make it possible to dispose of the rest of the Imperial troops which remain in the city, and Grommel is to disperse the guards in the palace, clearing the way for the assassins to make their way to Conan's room. It's a pretty well-planned assassination, and Dion thinks that he'll claim the crown, while Volmana wants to restore his estates from poverty to wealth at the expense of the rest of the country and the peasants. Grommel just detests Palantides, who was favored for a promotion to the position of commander of the Black Dragons because Conan trusted Palantides more than he trusted Grommel.
For good reasons.
Yeah, and Ronaldo just detests Conan because, as it's stated on page 25, Ronaldo idolizes the previous king whom Conan killed to claim the crown, and only remembers that he occasionally patronized the arts, forgetting the evils of this king's reign, with Ronaldo pretty much singing a song called The Lament for the King, lauds the sainted villain, as the story calls that previous king, and denounces Conan as a black-hearted savage from the abyss. The reason for all this is stated to be poets always hate those in power. To them, perfection is always just behind the last corner or beyond the next. They escape the present and dreams of the past and future. Ronaldo is a flaming torch of idealism, rising as he thinks to overthrow a tyrant and liberate the people.
So you've got your propagandist.
But what do you think of this description of poets?
In a way, there's a lot of young people that do have this mentality and do have this starry-eyed version of recently murdered ruler.
Or the past or the future. Like, oh, the future will be better than today. Or the past was better than today.
Exactly.
Well, I don't think it's simply youth. I do think there's an element of it with poets thought, but you got some poets and scholars such as Procopius who looked at the past with starry eyes but hated Justinian. Although with Justinian's because he was basically a Greek Stalin in some ways. You look at other poets throughout history, some like Ovid lauded the future but hated the present because he didn't like Augustus, because Augustus did not really approve of Ovid's womanizing and fraternizing with conspirators who wanted to assassinate Augustus, because Ovid obviously wanted to kill.
And some of these poets, they just want to make themselves seem like they're heroes in the annals of history. They'll be great.
But what's funny is that the greatest of poets don't do this. Don't do like Ronaldo. Later date, some of them did do this, some of them didn't. It's rather interesting. As to Escalante, he desires a crown for himself, because of course he does. He wants to kill off his co-conspirators afterwards so he could claim the crown. Makes sense. There's a lot of nods to Julius Caesar with this short story. The Julius Caesar play by William Shakespeare, because it opens up with the assassins kind of discussing, we gotta kill Julius Caesar. Howard did base this part off of the Julius Caesar play. Now, the play gets into the assassination attempt. This story follows the same kind of beats, but the difference is Conan survives, and Conan also is looking at the assassins and going, I know they're coming to get me. Whereas Julius Caesar says, bah, it's impossible. He's so arrogant he doesn't think of it. And that's the key difference. Now let's get to Phaethon. The slave of Escalante desires the one ring to rule them all. Because after all, 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for Phaethon on his dark throne, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. I'm joking, I couldn't resist that.
Yeah.
Howard was looking at the Brynhildr story and the whole Ring saga, just as Tolkien later was. The similarities are there. The difference is we see Phaethon, and we see him use magic, whereas Sauron does not exactly appear on screen, so to speak. And in the novels, there's no flaming eyeball of... You've got Phaethon, who's a very different character from Sauron. He just wants power for its own sake. Sauron actually has a designated goal. I actually prefer Sauron as a villain to Phaethon. Although Phaethon is almost a plot device in and of himself. He does have a character motivation. He wants his old powers back, but at the moment, the Stygian is enslaved. But he's also a nod to ancient Egyptian literature and Egyptian sorcerers in folklore, in novels that were out at the time, such as those by The Mummy's Shroud, I think, by Bram Stoker. And that's it for our next Conan video. We'll pursue this topic and continue with the next chapter. Don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button like your Conan smashing his enemies into itty-bitty pieces.